For many of us, there's been times when we've been knocked down, and there's things that happen, whether it's in our childhood or through our adulthood, where we get knocked down, where confidence is depleted, and we stop to believe in who we are and what we're capable of doing. And it's those times where we need that extra energy, that community to come up together to make us be whole to who we really are. Because sometimes along the journey, we tend to forget. And I know that's happened to me many times throughout my life. And my lovely co host, Nicole, what do you think?
I love that you use the word journey, because that's one of the things I always talk about. Everybody's so quick to think they have to get to a destination, whether that's a physical destination and wherever they're going or driving, or there's a mental destination. And one of the things that I've found is I've been on this healing journey for quite some time, 10 years at least. And what you finally come to realize is that there's no time frame for it. There's no stopping it. There's no ending it. It's just that you morph into many different people at many different times, and all of those are right and correct if it's coming from your heart. So I can't wait to talk to our guest today, Glenda. I met her several months ago, and she just resonated with me. She absolutely resonated with me. She's kind. She does speak from her heart, which you and I both do as well. And we know that is the most important place to come from, is your heart center, your truth center, and your love center. And this lady today, she's fascinating. She's an author and a coach. She's been on her healing journey over 20 years. So I think she would agree that we never stop. We heal. Sometimes we trip, sometimes we fall, we get up, we heal again. That's what it's all about. And that is part of the journey. She wrote the book, The Energy Harvest, which talks about her spiritual journey. And her spiritual journey started at 2. And I think that's very common, that some can't even talk. Some journeys do start that young, because we're not aware of it, possibly because it's in our subconscious. But there's a lot of things when we're little that just the way your parents treat you or talk to you, or something happens, there you are, and it's stuck. So I want to talk to this lady today. I can't wait to hear what she has to say. So let's bring B Von Squires to our stage.
Hello and welcome so much for joining us today, B. I'm so excited to have you here.
Thank you both so much for inviting me here. This is such an honor. I'm so excited to talk to you more about my journey. You both sound so wonderful. I know we're going to have a great experience today.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Yes, here for you. So, as I said to you just before we got on the show, my intention when all of our shows, when we do it, is because we all get knocked down in life. There isn't, if you don't get knocked down and dragged out, I don't believe you're human, because it happens to all of us at certain times. It's the matter of what how hard we fall and what has happened that changes of who we are. But most importantly, like I've said, I want people to feel the same thing, that if they can do it, so can I. I want them to be. So the only way we can have that is if you would please share with us your journey, and how did you get to be where you are? What was the thing that knocked you down?
Oh, wow. When I take a look, thank you so much for asking that question, because it all starts in the beginning. Any journey starts with the beginning. And so I didn't even know I was on an actual journey per se. I was just a small child, that was delivered to a couple of young parents who did not have parenting skills. We didn't have the same opportunities back then as we do now. And so for whatever reason, the conditions, were a perfect storm, if you will. I don't know what was going on in my father's mind the day that he put a pillow over my face. I have no idea. I knew I was crying. And I don't know if he just couldn't take the crying or where my mom was during all of this. I really don't know all of that. All I know is that he put a pillow over my face. And I, from that time on, all I knew was this energy of this person cannot be trusted. I am afraid. And I didn't even know at 2 years old what afraid meant. All I did know is that there was something about our interaction from that point on that I did not feel safe. And it was in my subconscious mind because I remember at 4 and 5 years old being excited about him as my father, being excited, thinking he was just the coolest cat around. You know what I'm saying? And I just wanted to be in his presence. And but there was something between us. Not sure exactly what his thought process was. I heard the rumors. Obviously, there are secrets and family rumors and things like that. I don't know how true they were, but all I do know is that no matter how hard I tried, I could never find favor in his eyes. And I tried, trust me. And every time I tried, I was met with rejection, even though I didn't know it was rejection at that time, because those are some pretty big words for a 4 or 5 year old. You know what I'm saying? And so, that's where it all started, was like when I was 2 years old with the pillow over the face and feeling that sense of fear and fright. And then when I was 4 years old, I actually was shot by my cousin. We were supposed to be taking a nap at my grandmother's house. And we weren't taking a nap. Obviously, we were playing like little kids do. And from under the mattress came the pistol that was meant to protect my grandmother at night while my grandfather was at work. But it came out from under the mattress, and pow, there I was lying on the floor after being shot in the back. And yeah, and so it was during the summer months, and I was at my grandmother's house. And so my mother and father were not there. And all I do remember is waking up in the hospital with my mom nowhere around, feeling totally abandoned. So there we go. Some more issues to compound it all, and not being able to make sense out of it with my tiny mind. I did the best I could to try to make sense out of it, to make sure that these things don't happen to me again. I'm going to make sure somehow that I don't find myself in these types of situations. And so from those small agreements that I made with myself, with my underdeveloped mind, I went on to live those out for years. And I also made other agreements with myself along the way. Growing up, I was a very inquisitive child. I loved going to school because that's where I saw what was possible. At school, I made great grades. At school, the teachers praised me. I got the validation that I needed that I was not getting at home. And so, except for academically. Now, academically, we were praised and we were encouraged to do well in school. As a matter of fact, if we didn't do well in school, there was, some dire consequences as a result of that. And so I loved school and went on, and my father was in the military. So we grew up all over the United States and parts of Europe, and which was a great childhood. Some of the things that some children only read about in books, I was actually able to see with my own very eyes in reality, which made it a very great opportunity for learning. However, every time we left one school, there was a sense of loss. There was a sense of me that was lost along the way that I wasn't even really aware of until after, the final move. The final move was at 17. We were living in Georgia. I was, part of the yearbook committee. I was on the Spanish team. I was part of the, Future Business Leaders of America. I mean, I just did everything that I could. Such a go-getter, such an overachiever I was, because I was always trying to be accepted, always trying to be seen for my value that I felt I was never seen. And so maybe if I do all these wonderful things, he'll see me. Maybe if I do all these wonderful things, he'll accept me. Maybe one day he'll love me.
Wow. And you know, B, I have a question about the pillow. At age 2, I mean, you obviously remember that, but was he trying to punish you, or was he trying to, like, were you crying? What was the situation? Do you remember the situation behind that? That I just can't even imagine as a parent myself doing that.
Sure. Like I said, I don't know what his rationale was at the time, and maybe it was he couldn't get me to stop crying. I don't know. And one of the things that triggered me and alerted me to this was way later in my 20s, when I was, in a relationship with someone. They're lying asleep, you know, being cuddled in certain positions. You know what I'm saying? I freaked out. I couldn't breathe. You know, I, you know,
Yeah.
Yes.
I
The trauma got embedded.
exactly. And so that's when I knew that there was an issue, and I was able to trace it back to that due to the claustrophobia, going through MRI machines, those sorts of things, playing with my brothers, throw the blanket over and grab her, oh my God, it was just deathly terrifying for me just to be able to relive all of these things, from that one exposure or that one traumatic experience. So yeah, like I don't know why it happened, but I do know that it did happen. And later on, my spirit was able to explain to me why it was so necessary for that to happen. I can tell you now what spirit told me about that, if you'd like to hear about that.
I would
Sure.
be very curious to
Yeah.
hear how spirit describes that. Yes, please.
Exactly. Well, growing up, I could see my father was a loving man because I saw him be loving and genuinely caring for my siblings. I knew it was in him. It just wasn't in him for me. It just wasn't for me, but I knew he had it in him. And that's what made me long for it so much, is because I know you're capable. I can see it, but why not for me? And so what Spirit was able to explain to me is, had that traumatic experience at the age of 2 not happened, there would not have been that disconnect between he and I, right? And so as a result of that disconnect between he and I was actually being started on my journey even that young and didn't even realize it. And so had I ever been able to witness that level of love and care that he was giving to my siblings, I never would have gone down the path of destruction that I needed to go down in order to gather the information, gather the lessons, gather the blessings, learn who I am, be introduced to my innate spiritual gifts. I would have never, ever become Coach B Von had I been able to experience those loving relationships with my father at that time or during my life.
So, first of all, the first thing that comes in the question into my mind is, was he your natural father?
You know, that question has come up even in my own mind. I have heard rumors, that he thought I was not his child. And, the way that the whole thing turned out is, or the way that, let me explain this to you. My father was a Vietnam veteran. He went over to Vietnam serving his country. He came back. My brother was born. My brother, my older brother. He left to go back to Vietnam. Well, he left my mom, we think, pregnant, obviously. He comes back and he has a daughter. Of course, there was no email. There was no,
Yes.
video. He could not have ever expected that he would come home to a second child when all he really only knew is he fathered one. So when he came back, I was there. How do you wrap your mind around that? And so I think that maybe in the back of his mind, he questioned paternity for me. My mother was a young woman living with his parents and his siblings, and not in a very good environment for a young woman.
And
So
also the fact of being over and being in the army and sort of things, who knows what of the things that he lived through and he participated in. Right.
Absolutely.
So you come back with a very different, PTSD, whatever, all the traumas that people deal with that, and coming back and then, maybe feeling that shock. Not that it's right. I'm not saying to that, but, thinking to yourself and what would be the difference if you were or you weren't? That doesn't matter either. And I'm not projecting to that. There's nothing more sweeter than a beautiful baby. It is, there's the gift of life is beyond. But let's look at it a step further, and I can talk to in that respect, because I remember having a second child after my first baby's 2 years old, and along comes my daughter, who was just an absolute, looked like an angel, but she had lungs that would just penetrate through you. And, I was, even though I was married, I was basically a single parent. My spouse at the time, he never did anything. So besides being up nights and being exhausted, and then when the baby finally falls asleep, then the 2-year-old's up. So you just never stop. So you sometimes lose control. And I remember that one time I lost control, and I didn't hurt her. I put her in her crib. Thank God, because I knew she had to be out of my arms.
Sure.
Because I was at that point. So just trying. So did you ever form after that time, or as you started growing up, did you form a relationship with him at any point? Did you find some connection there?
I did, to a certain degree. And just when I thought we were in a great place, at the drop of a hat, things change. I might have said something that he didn't appreciate, and then there we were again, not speaking to each other for God awful long times. I mean, I remember growing up, not speaking to him, not having a conversation with him for at least a year, living
Wow.
in the home with him, only to tell me, wash the dishes. What are you doing out of your room? Those kinds of things, So, I kept longing for the relationship, and then just kept internalizing the fact that it wasn't available to me, and it had to be me.
Had to be,
It had to be me. It had to be my fault. I'm not worthy, all of these things, until one day I had just had enough of it. You know what I'm saying? And I said, well, God, if you're not going to allow me to have the relationship with him that I would like, please take the desire for a relationship away from me, so that I can go on and live, so that I can go on and heal. And I found that even though I tried and I bent over backwards and I did all of the things that I knew I could do, it takes two. We both have to want a relationship. And for years, he just didn't want a relationship with me. And that's his choice. And I became able to accept his choice. And so Spirit gave me another little nugget to help me along the way, and helped me to understand is that when you have the label father on someone, there are a whole set of rights, responsibilities, expectations, and all of that go along with that label. So let's try removing that label, right? Because he's not earning it anyway. So let's remove that label. And now he's just a human being that I can have compassion for. Now he's just another human being, that is allowed to have his choice. And if he doesn't want a relationship with me, then now it's okay, because I've removed that label and I'm able to see it from a different perspective.
Okay, at what point in your life did you finally click in to remove that label? Did you realize that he's really not your father in the terms or sense of what we think in society a father should be?
Correct. When was that, you say?
Yes. How old were you around that point?
It was only 2 years ago.
Oh, wow. So this whole time, they're siblings, right? And you're kind of the only one that doesn't have the relationship?
Yes.
Wow. That
Yes.
has to be just tough. But
Well,
do
for
you,
a long time, it was tough, Nicole. Yeah, it really was. What were you going to
yeah.
ask?
And did you, I mean, were there family dinners, were Christmases, holidays that you had to go to and attend, and there was really nothing between you and your father?
Oh, yes, many times. I always had Father's Day gifts. I always had birthday gifts, Christmas gifts, and he refused to receive any of them. He would tell me, "I don't want anything from you." Like those kinds of things. And so after having your heart just wrenched,
Wow.
you know, um, and after so long, I just stopped buying them. I just stopped
Sure.
buying them. I finally decided, you know what? He doesn't want them. I'm going to stop buying them. And I remember being out at an Italian restaurant for, I think it was Christmas. And it was the first Christmas that I was actually allowed to come to visit because he forbade me to come to his home. And during that time, my mother had Alzheimer's. She was losing her greatest years, and I was not allowed to be around her. They had to sneak her out of the house to see me and spend time with me so that I could love on her. But this one particular time, we were out having dinner, and I remember it so vividly. I had bought gifts for everyone. Everyone got a gift from me that year. And as I was passing the gifts out, he rejected my gift in front of everyone in such a public place, in such a public way that it just crushed me. And after that point, I said, no more, no more
Yeah.
gifts.
A
I'm
heart, a heart just can't take it.
exactly. But I secretly harbored still the desire,
Sure.
Of course,
but
it
And,
doesn't matter how old you are.
that's what I was just going to say. We could be 90 and our parent 110. We still desire that connection, I guess, just by birthright, or that connection of DNA, that connection of half of him is in you. You're his daughter, and it's just. Did you ever have a sit down with him in terms of face to face with no one else around, and question that or ask or and
yes, many times, and I even, told him that I didn't think he was my father. As a matter of fact, I asked my mother, is he really my father? Because I cannot imagine a father treating his daughter this way. I just cannot imagine it. And her answer to me was, well, you look just like him. Well, I look like his uncle, my uncle too. You know what I'm saying? And the genes are real strong in our family. So that was not a definitive answer for me. You know what I'm saying? And so when I posed the question to him, he's like, well, I'm the only one you've got, was the answer I get from. So still nothing totally definitive. But at this point, it doesn't even matter. I'm a child of God. You know what I'm saying? He's my
right,
father, and he has stepped in to heal those wounds and to relieve me of the burden of wanting a relationship that is not for me. He's given me such a great new perspective to look at this thing from, where it's not even about my father anymore. It's about the lessons that I have learned along the way. It's about he did his part. He was supposed to reject me. He was supposed to crush me so that I could go run to God and say, please tell me who I am, because I don't know. Only for God to say, you are wonderfully and fearfully made. Only for him to say, you're my sunflower, always looking up, praising me. I will leave a legacy through you. Whew, don't get me started, because
I love it. I love it because, it is so important that we look at things that have been given to us, and whether we like it or not, it doesn't matter. But it's how we deal with what has been given to us, right? It's how we can see things better in that way that it can actually inspire us to move forward. So did you go for treatments, or how did you deal with the fact, because that's a huge amount of trauma
huge.
for anybody to be deal with in life. When your own parents reject you, there's got to be somewhere where you can get some form of help before, we need somebody out there.
yes, absolutely. Well, I have to say, for years, it was just total destruction, self-destruction. self-loathing, self-destruction, narcissistic type relationships, because I just needed to feel validated. I just wanted someone to touch me. I just needed someone to make me feel whole. And so I gravitated towards just anybody who could fill that void. And which of course led me down to some pretty dark paths, you know what I'm saying, some pretty dark behaviors. And then finally, after hitting the bottom, well, I actually OD'd, in active addiction. And I remember being in this tunnel, out of my body, in this tunnel, just like energy, just flying through this tunnel, reaching out, trying to slow myself down, trying to stop myself. Where am I going? What is happening? Oh my God, there weren't any walls. There wasn't anything to touch because I didn't have any hands. I was energy. I was out of my physical shell. And it was this experience that I knew I was more than just my body. I knew that I was an energetic being and I was on my way someplace and I was not in control. And so once I came back to my body, I opened my eyes and I wasn't sure where I was going to be. And where I was in someone's backyard with a lot of people standing around me, telling me that they had resuscitated me. And, up with the arms, expanding my lungs, getting air in and they resuscitated me. But after that point, I knew for myself, no one has to ever tell me that I'm an energetic being, and no one can deny me that, because that is my truth. And that is something I know for sure. And so you ask about treatment. I did go to therapy. I was in therapy for 8 years straight 8 years. I noticed that the relationships that I was getting in all served this low vibrational energy that was inside of me, just perpetuating the low self-esteem, perpetuating the need for validation. It was just so needy. I didn't know who I was. And I thought, like many others think, that we're supposed to get that from outside sources. I make you whole, you make me whole, and but no. That's not the way it works.
It can be quite the nightmare, just the opposite of what we think. I know.
Absolutely. And so through therapy, I was able to take a look at the relationship I was currently in. And that's why I went, because I wanted to get out of that relationship. But what I learned was that relationship was not my problem. That my problem was much more deeper. It was in my thinking and the way that I saw myself. And so through therapy, I was able to get a better perspective of who I am. And I was able to then start going to college. And then I was able to see that, yes, you can achieve great things. Yes, you are more than they said you were. Yes, you are going to amount to something someday, And so after those 8 years of therapy, I then went on and got my master's degree. And so I was able to just learn so much about me. I was able to give back to others through the 12-step modality. There were just so many opportunities for growth. And as you go through the 12-step modality, there's a particular place where you are introduced to a higher power source. And it was this higher power source that I remembered as a child, the same God I knew then, but just in a more realistic way, more adult thought process, not the God of my childhood, but the God that took me through all of the dark times and now has shown up again in my life saying, I brought you through this and I have something else so much more for you. And so that's when I gravitated towards that. Then I started getting these downloads, and he would speak to me and he would tell me things. And I thought I was going crazy. And, because it's like, oh my God, I'm hearing voices. How do I know this? I don't know how I know this. I just know this. I was seeing premonitions, having visions, all of this. I had become a new person through all of the evolution that was my life. I not became the spiritual being. I was able to discover my gifts, if you will. And so that's how it kind of
But I got to give you credit because it's more than that. You see, we all have that voice, that those things that come to us. But what many people do is they don't recognize it. They don't listen to it. They shut it down. And what ends up happening after a while, when you keep shutting things down, the voice becomes lower and lower and lower because they're not listening to it. They're not, putting themselves out there to going, oh, I got to change my way. Like maybe we're going left and something's telling us, no, we should be going right. That's just an easy form to say, but you know what I mean? If we don't listen, so I give you credit because not everybody listens. And for a matter of fact, most people don't listen.
Very
And
true.
and for that, at what point did you end up having recognizing that voice that's coming in? Because sometimes that voice becomes, and it has in my life, where at times it's actually screamed at me. So
Yes.
it's like, yeah, like you got to pay attention there, girl. Well, you got
Bam.
like, well, yeah, I've had so many
You
crazy
have.
times in my life where, I had to run into a wall one time. I mean, actually, and, before I actually listened, it's like the old story. You stub your toe once and you don't learn until you break your foot.
Yeah. And some people are afraid to listen, I think, because they're not familiar with it. And they don't understand that if you surrender and if you just release to something higher than self, there's the knowledge, there's the wisdom, there's the path
Sure.
that lies in front of you. And we've also been taught not to go inside of ourselves where all the answers are. So when you're not utilizing your power, you're going to go down some really dirty little roads and dirty little paths. And if people would just understand the connection we have, how
Mhm.
what's not only spiritual but powerful beings that we are, it could be a whole different world out there in no time if people would have the faith to just listen, observe, and learn.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. But to answer your question, Glenda, it was back in 2010. I remember it like it was yesterday. Um, I wanted to start a nonprofit organization, and I needed money for the IRS. And I didn't want to go for the 550 because I thought, you know what, I don't want to limit the universe from blessing me with a humongous, you know, funding opportunity. So I'm going to go for the gusto. And I didn't know where the money was going to come from. Well, I had applied for school, and I guess they automatically, I don't know, I didn't do this, but one day I got a check in the mail, and it was more than what I needed, but I knew what to do with the money. I knew it was for, the IRS and the nonprofit. And I opened up the check, and I was like, oh my gosh. And so then I heard this loud, thunderous voice. I'm talking, I am God. I can do anything. And all
Wow.
I could do was just go lay down in my bed and know that I was in his presence. All I could do was just lay there in the fetal position, just knowing that I've tapped into something so much bigger than myself. And that was the first time that I was ever felt like I was in his actual presence. You know what I mean? Like I could just feel his presence. Like it was so thick. I just knew that I was in his presence. And that was the first time. And then in 2015, 2000, yeah, about 2015, I was on my way to work one morning. And as I came around the underpass to straighten out and go, where the direction where I'm going, I'm in a whole different city. I live in Indiana at the time. There are no mountains in Indiana. But when I came under that underpass, there were mountains all over the place. I'm like, where are you taking me? Oh my gosh, mountains. And so I'm okay. Well, 2 years later, I moved to Tucson, Arizona. Who knew that my job would then move me to Tucson, Arizona? And so I've been seeing premonitions and hearing him speak to me. He said, write the book. And I'm like, what book are you talking about? Well, then the book was written. And from there, just so many things have been connected. Just the dots are connecting. It's an amazing journey when you know that you are on the right path. I know that I'm on the right path. I know that I am doing what my spirit, is saying for me to do. I'm obedient. I know that he's leading me somewhere wonderful, and that the journey has been wonderful along the way. So many miracles have happened in my life that I can't even count them all. And I'm just so grateful, just so, so grateful to be aware, just aware that I have a purpose and it's meaningful.
And that's a key word. Well, let's draw attention to that, because awareness in our lives is probably one of the most important things that we can have. Aware that we might not be on the right track, aware that we are on the right track, aware of the person that we're connected to might not be the right person. We have to really start to look and listen to things all around us. So it really is like it's in its own way, it's like a compass.
Oh,
And
yeah.
I really think it's something we need to be.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. When I think about awareness, when I did write the book, the first part of is identifying the trauma. We have to be aware of the situation before we can heal it. And it's not about pointing fingers. It's not about saying, oh, you did this to me, you bad person. But no, it's about saying, where do I begin to heal? Where? What do I need to heal? Becoming aware of it, recognizing it, and then moving forward to change that mindset that goes from blame to forgiveness, so that
Yes.
we can move to the next phase, so that we're not stuck. So many people get stuck in that identifying phase because they're unwilling to forgive, because they're unwilling to change their mindset. And that right there is not their own fault, because the way our minds are set up, the ego doesn't want any new information that might be scary and intimidating. So it wants to shut all that down and keep us from getting any new information in. And that's why at night, when I go to bed at night, I take advantage of that opportunity to feed my subconscious mind, because the ego and the conscious mind are asleep.
Yes.
And get in there what I need in there, so that when I wake up tomorrow, I've had a refresh. When I wake up the next day, I'm ready to move forward, because I was able to give myself what I needed through the night. So these are the ways that I work with it, knowing that I have a propensity for low self-esteem. I use affirmations. I speak life to myself on a daily basis. I do things that are esteemable, so that I don't find a false sense of self-esteem in something that's just going to deteriorate. And then where would my self-esteem be? But when I put it into my actions and helping others, you can't take that from me. That belongs to me and my self-esteem. You see what I mean? So these are the ways that I live my life. These are the things that I do to keep myself positive and to keep myself, moving forward in that mindset, that abundant mindset, not that mindset of lack that says you are nothing, you're never going to amount to anything. When you hear these things over and over, they're ingrained in your autopilot. And so it's up to us to definitely go in there and make sure that we're doing the corrective measures.
Exactly. But again, it comes to the fact of being aware of what's going on in your head. What is that self-talk that's going on? And that's why, let's talk about it. That's why one of the most important factors is to go through and have a coach, of somebody who can start pointing out things when we can't see things in our own life, because it's very true. Sometimes we don't see what's in our own front yard.
Exactly. Exactly. I love that. And the book that I wrote, it's a workbook. And in the workbook, it's designed to help people ask themselves the questions. When was the first time you felt rejected? When was the first time you felt fear? Because they might not look at it as trauma. I didn't look at it as trauma for years. It was just my life. It was just what was happening to me. There was some normalcy to it. And so helping others, even if they're not sitting in front of a coach, with the workbook, I'll show it to you.
Yeah, please.
With the workbook.
I have
You got yours too, yay!
and that's a story I want you to tell also, how your podcast, The Healing Train, and this book came together, because that was downloaded to you, right?
Yes, the whole thing was. I had been given the healing train. Not that, ooh, that sounds really cool. I like that. What is that going to be, God? What is that? And of course, I didn't know right away, because we only get little bits and pieces. It's like
nuggets, right? Yeah.
Little nuggets. He just dropped that little nugget in, and I had it pinned, and I was like, okay, one day I'll know what the healing train is all about. And then I got the charge, write the book. And I thought it was supposed to be some autobiography, just talking about all of the trauma and all of the darkness and all of that kind of stuff. I didn't know what it was supposed to be. And then as he was downloading to me and telling me how to write the book and making sure that it's a workbook and it's going to have 4 phases, and what are the 4 phases. And during that time, I was listening to John Maxwell, on the highly effective people, and how you have to start with a goal and what are the sequences. And I am a systems thinker. And so I thought, I have to be able to use my background in systems redesign to create a process, because healing is a process and nobody actually really understands how the process goes. And so I thought, well, let's just make something for them. I didn't think that. This is what God's saying. Let's make the process for them. And I was like, okay, so what are we going to name it? What will this look like? And that's when he gave me identify. You have to be able to identify your issue before you can address it. Become aware, as Glenda was saying. And then it went on to, okay, what is the mindset? We have to take a look at your mindset, because the thinking is what propels everything. If your thinking is off track, you're going to be off track. But once your thinking can get into a great place, then you can move along. Then once you heal all of that, you forgive, you get yourself into a place where you can move forward without all of that emotional baggage. Because see, you can't bring all of that heavy baggage with you along the way. You got to drop it off. And then I was able to talk about or think about, okay, well, then what? Then you're able to achieve things, even if it's no more than just advocating for yourself or, standing up for yourself to yourself, because sometimes we have to stand up to ourselves as well.
Yeah, of course.
To get in that mirror.
I live in a house of me, myself, and I, and we have to talk to each other a lot of times. And sometimes me and myself, we between the 3 of us, I should say, So
Exactly.
we need to learn, and we need to talk to ourselves, to believe in ourselves at times.
Absolutely.
How many times can you look in the mirror and you don't want to look in the mirror? Have you been through that part in your life?
I have. I couldn't look in the mirror.
That's right. And I lived through that through so many times through part of my life, that you look in the mirror and you really didn't see who was in the mirror. Mm-hmm. And it takes actually some training to really be able to start looking at yourself and actually seeing yourself in that mirror.
That is so powerful. That is so powerful. Yes.
And that's what people are afraid of. That's the fear right there. And that is part of the journey is to look at yourself. And if there is something to take as blame, you have to take it, because every situation, usually there's 2 involved, even if it's, you and God, God's going to tell you, look in that mirror and look who caused that.
Absolutely. And that's the part that's so important, is it's so easy to blame until you're able to see the part you played in it. And that's part of the book as well. We take a look at what role did you play in that situation?
And that's what people don't always understand, right?
Yes.
You get into a position and you blame it on somebody else and you're all it is, but then you really got to come back and say, okay, there's 2 people in this relationship. Where did I come in? What did I do? Like, start coming in and taking accountability for every little thing, because that's how you get through it.
Absolutely. That's how you grow. That's exactly how it happens, Glenda. You're so right. That's how we get through it. That's how we move through it, is looking at our part. And then just to wrap this part up, the last section of the book is called the sustain phase. And it's how do you sustain all of the momentum, all of the healing, all of the lessons that you've learned from the beginning of the book to the end of the book. And so then we just offer, spiritual practices like yoga. At the back of the book, there's 7 days worth of meditations. So every day, until you learn on your own, you can go back Monday through Sunday, and there's a meditation back here for you to take a look at. And then yeah, so that's what that's all about. And so I'm working now on a new book, a meditation book for beginners, because so many people they don't know how to meditate, but they want to know. So that's the next charge that I have been given.
Wow.
Beautiful. I think, I adore that. And it is such an important part in all of our lives, because it really breaks down and opens us up for more possibilities.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm.
I think they should teach that in school. Just, even if it's just with little kids laying there in silence for a few minutes, and build up to something like that, because that meditation and silence is your key. It's your key to understanding. It's your key to yourself.
Absolutely. But how many parents are really going to go for that? You know what I mean? There's such a stigma. Yeah, there's such a stigma. And then the domestication, that we all came here with, certain things you just don't believe. We just don't do that. It was good enough for my granddaddy. It was good enough for his. It's good enough for my family too. You know what I'm saying? So,
going back thousands of years.
Yes, exactly. And so where does it
meet?
Exactly.
I understand.
Well, and we got the other side of things, that people are so busy trying to keep their kids busy, and that, I came from a world where I saw that people were so busy programming their kids and so many things that kids never even had the time to even just play, or just to be, right? One of the most important things we need to learn is just to be able to be present at the moment.
Oh, yes.
And that's why so many people cannot be present. They're living in the past, or they're living in the future. But how about being where we are right now?
So important.
All of these things.
Yeah, I believe there's the idea that that we need to be busy, that our minds need to be busy, that should always be thinking of something. What are you accomplishing? What's your next goal? Blah, blah, blah. When do we get a chance to, ebb? Because there's an ebb and a flow, not just a flow, 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 flow. When do we get a chance to ebb and go inward and heal those parts, that are still broken? Another layer, because as I think, Nicole, you and I talked about, peeling that onion, those layers. And so they are peeled during our quiet time. They are peeled during those times where we can sit still and meditate and hear. You know what I'm saying? If not hear from there, hear from here. You know what I mean? Just hear what's inside of here. But like you said, that can be a very frightening place, especially when you've not been there before, especially when there's still so much trauma that needs to be healed. But once that trauma is healed, it opens up all the rest of the things that are available to us. But the trauma has to be healed first.
Yes.
But if you're not quiet enough at any point in time, then how are you going to even know that trauma is existing? Because all you keep doing is putting more and more layers over. So you're making it even more difficult.
Well, the way you know is you are 5'2" and you're 182 pounds. Well, there's a problem there. There's a trauma there somewhere. That was me. And I had to look at why am I eating my emotions?
Yeah.
And once I was able to identify that, then I was able to go in and do something differently, and I was able to lose the weight. You know what I'm saying? But that's you wake up one day and you don't have a home because you've been spending too much time in the casino. These are the ways that we know that there's a problem when we don't know on the front end. The back end will surely tell us.
Yeah. And those are just ways to avoid the truth. We keep ourselves busy and, we go to the right, we go to the left, in any place but center.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. You know what? For the most part, I don't turn my TV on
I don't
unless,
either.
and I listen to frequencies. I know that sounds not to you ladies, not to this audience, but some
Yeah.
audiences would sounds cuckoo, but I'm always looking for ways to manage what my inner, my inner being, because there's so many cues out here and so many subliminal messages out here that would like to program us to think other things. And so when you turn those off, you still need to program yourself to something positive. My latest thing is tolerance. That's one of the principles that Spirit has been working with me on, because I've said it so many times. I have no tolerance for that. My tolerance level is so low for that. And that's not who I want to be. That's not where I want to be. And so what I've been able to understand through the download is tolerance is the degree to which I engage in something. Okay. Come with me here. So when I go in with tolerance, that means I'm not too far in, that I have to have my way, that I have to worry about the outcome, right? If I have to do that, I need to back up. I'm too far in, right? So tolerance is the degree to which I approach life. It's the degree to which I approach my relationships. Because if I have tolerance, then I'm not going to try to control your behavior. I'm not going to try to control your decisions, because guess what? Those are yours and not mine. And if I'm trying to control them, that means I want a particular outcome, which means I'm too far in. Back up, back up and operate in tolerance. And that was just the latest thing that I got. And it just helped me so much. For Thanksgiving, we're supposed to go and meet with the family down in Houston. And this will be the first time that all of us have been in the same place since my mom died in 2021. My father will be there. And so
Oh,
I'm operating in tolerance.
yeah.
Operating in tolerance, remembering there are no labels, and remembering that I don't need anyone's validation to be who I am. And so these are the things that I'm using to prepare myself to go into this situation. There has to be preparation, so
Absolutely.
yeah. So these are the things that I'm currently working on. I believe we're always working on something. Something always needs to be fine-tuned or, taken out, removed, whatever the case may be. And so these are the things that I'm currently working on. Yeah.
Beautiful.
Wow.
So we're unfortunately coming to closer to the end. I know it always goes by just with that, especially great conversations. So people that are maybe a few steps behind or maybe miles behind, what are some encouraging words or some ways that you can help them get through so maybe they can find the area of being tolerant to certain situations, being mindful, or ways of getting out from underneath what they're experiencing?
Thank you for asking that. I would say the things that have helped me the most is learning not to take things personally. Everyone is on their journey, just like I'm on my journey. There is no conspiracy to destroy my life. And when I take things personally, I'm unable to see the solutions because I'm too wrapped up in it emotionally. But if I could just learn not to take things personally, which it is not easy to do that because I have always taken things personally. And so to learn that that was my demise and say, okay, I'm going to work at it. It's a daily thing. It's a daily commitment that I'm making to myself. Today, I am equipped and prepared for whatever comes my way. I will not take anything personally because everyone's on their own personal journey. They're in their bubble. I'm in my bubble. Our bubbles might bounce off of each other, but it wasn't intentional because they're on their path and I'm on my path. And what the other thing I would like to encourage people to do is take time out to just breathe. Take time out to just be still and just be quiet And if you're not sure about the spiritual realm, it's okay. You don't have to have all the answers. If you're curious, just say something like, this is what I say: show me what I need to see, tell me what I need to hear, and connect me to who I need to be connected to for the purpose that you have put in me. And so these are the things that I say to myself, and it's helped me a lot. Don't be afraid or ashamed of the trauma that has happened in your life, because it's not your fault that you have the traumas. So these are the things that I would say. Give yourself grace and learn to love you, because until I was able to love myself, I kept having to grab it from other people who were not available to give it to me. So I had to do without. But once I was able to do it myself, now I have all the love I could ever need. Of course, at some point, someone else is going to enter my life, but we'll both be healthy people, responsible for our own selves, and not feeling like I need to have you to complete me. I don't need anyone to complete me. I was created complete. And so that's the thing that I know today that I didn't know before. So these are the things I would say.
Beautiful.
That's absolutely beautiful. Very well said. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you both.
Nicole, what are some last moments, what thoughts that you have on today's conversation?
Well, this is such an important conversation, and everything that we talked about today is so true, right down from it being a journey, not to take anything personally. There's so much that can be taken from our conversation today. And for me, I think the most important thing that I learned was that the answers are not outside of me. The answers are inside of me. And if I just take the time, and you do have to come to terms with that, practice that, understand that. But when you talk about being whole from the moment you're born, you really are. You just kind of forget about it, or you go along the journey and you get poked and prodded and talked about. But if you can realize to not take anything personally, to take responsibility for you, and at some point love yourself enough to make peace with you and watch yourself blossom, knowing that there's so much good inside of you. There's so much that is still left to come out. And I think that's the most important thing, is you will only find yourself by going inside of yourself.
Mm-hmm. Very true. Mm-hmm.
Well, I want to thank you very much, Coach B, for coming on today and for enlightening us with some very important words and outlooks in life, because really those are the words of wisdom that are been spoken today. And I want you all to remind you of something else. What came into my mind is, when I was a parent of young children, and my children would act out, I would tell them that they had to take time out, to sit quietly, to sit maybe in a corner, to something to slow them down. But what I didn't think in those days is what we all need to do in every day in our life is to take time out. Time out to think, time out to respond, or just look back at what has gone on and what is going on. So that time out that we give to our children, we got to be real within ourselves, and we've got to take time out for ourselves.
Beautiful.
Thank you all for joining us today on Let's Get Real, and let's get real about life, what's going on, and start to reflect on where you are. Thank you all.